COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
The city of Minneapolis is now on Native Roots Radio with Minneapolis AIR. AIR stands for American Indian Relations. Guest host Christine McDonald talks to people about important things affecting the city's Native communities. Minneapolis AIR dives into topics like public safety, public health, elections, and so much more. Tune in to Minneapolis AIR on Native Roots Radio from 5 to 6 p.m. on the second Wednesday of every month, right here on AM 950.
This is Chase Iron Eyes announcing a new show on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. The show is called Native American Patriot Talk Radio. What will we do on the show? We are going to explore and dive into the source of American constitutional sovereignty, the intersection of Native American and legal issues. Find us the first and third Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. on AM 950.
Culture prevents so many negative things from happening to us as individuals and as communities.
Strong roots begin with a healthy heart. For Indigenous women, heart health is part of caring for community, culture, and generations. Even small steps can help protect what matters most. Discover ways to support your heart at hennepincounty.gov/hearts-beats, because your heart beats for generations. Hey, it's Robert Pilot from Native Roots Radio. For a meal that feeds your soul and health, check out Gatherings Cafe. Located in the renovated Minneapolis American Indian Center, Executive Chef Vernon Defoe and team serve up incredible Indigenous flavors. Gatherings Cafe has amazing bison tacos featuring lean protein from native wise, corn tortillas, and homemade sides. It's fresh, local food rooted in ancestral knowledge. Stop by for breakfast or lunch. That's Gatherings Cafe, where tradition meets innovation.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Tonight, clear with a low of 58, then Thursday, sunshine with a high of 82. The Great Wall has been your home for Chinese favorites since 1981. Don't miss the sesame chicken, mushu pork with Chinese pancakes, or Peking duck. Stop in at the restaurant on France Avenue and 45th Street along the Minneapolis-Edina City line, or check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be Indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake. Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade.
Well, good evening, everybody. Wakanja Hade is not here, but I'm wearing a shirt. David Cournoyer, coming to you from the Twin Cities. Hello on AM 950 and live streaming on Facebook. And who knows where else Robert has us beamed out to. We're going to have fun tonight. I've known all these folks for a while, and I've known Pilot for a good 10 years off and on, and we're going to talk about leadership. I'm David Cournoyer, sort of a master of nothing, right? Jack of all trades, and I think a couple of us on this call might agree with that. And I don't know, maybe that's something you have to do in Indian country, is to be comfortable wearing different hats. We're going to talk about leadership, and this group with us tonight is going to have some advice about their leadership journeys. All four of us actually were part of a leadership circle more than 30 years ago. It's hard to believe, right? And that circle was all intended to help us find our gifts, our strengths, and our purpose, right? To really help not only ourselves as individuals, but to help people around us in our communities, in tribal settings and in other settings, nonprofit, higher ed, and other settings to go forward together, right? So we're participatory leaders as Native people. That's our collectivist values. Often it's said that leaders, if they get too far out, they're going to have a lot of arrows in the back, right? And I know all of us on this conversation have had that happen to us as well. But after that 30-year ago experience, these folks have all gone on to succeed in many ways as people in their fields, people in various walks of life in Native communities, in their home reservations, and we've stayed together too, which has been great for all of us. So I want to call on them to each introduce themselves. They're all West River, as we say in South Dakota, right? The Missouri cuts down, and West River is, we'll start with Michelle Fredericks DuBray. Introduce yourself, Michelle. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Like David said, I'm here in South Dakota on the West River. I'm on the Cheyenne River Reservation. I'm actually from Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara Nation up in North Dakota. But I've lived here for, I don't know, since 97. I lived in the state of South Dakota since 93. So I'm pretty local now. And I live on a buffalo ranch along the Missouri with my family. And we have done buffalo work now for, I don't know, 30 plus years. And I'll let David introduce somebody else.
And Michelle and her partner, Fred, have started a nonprofit called Buffalo First, and we'll hear later about Michelle's advocacy for what she calls the inherent rights of buffalo. I think you've gone all for United Nations and you've lawyered up, Michelle, so we look forward to you talking a little bit more about what that means. Let's turn to by far the smartest of this group, and he wouldn't tell anybody, but this guy is a dropout of West Point, and we'll leave it there. Dr. Joe Gaughan.
Hi, folks. It's so fun to do this, so thanks for including me. And my name is Joseph Gaughan, and I am Ani Rovant. We're on the Fort Belknap Reservation in north central Montana. On my dad's side, I'm from the Azure and Brisboe families. On my mom's side, from the Gaughan and Crazy families. And I'm a psychologist and research scientist, and I always say it's a good thing that my mom, whose name I carry as a surname, didn't abbreviate her own surname, or it'd be a psychologist named Dr. Gaughan Crazy, which may not be the best combination of things. I am a research psychologist, as I said, so I make knowledge. I think of myself as a craftsperson of sorts when it comes to knowledge production. And I've been in academia my entire career. I started at the University of Chicago, then I was at the University of Michigan for a good while, and now I'm a professor at Harvard University. I'm in both arts and sciences in the anthropology department, as well as in global health and social medicine at Harvard Medical School. And I'm the faculty director of the Harvard University Native American program. So it's a delight to join you today and to talk through some of these leadership issues.
Thanks, Joe. When we all met each other in 1994, Joe was finishing up his PhD at the University of Illinois. Michelle was working with Buffalo then. She's still working with Buffalo now. And Jim Swan, you're going to have to tell us what you were doing in 1994 as you introduce yourself from the Rocky Boy Reservation. I think today you're in Billings, Montana.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on and leaving me for last after these two distinguished panelists and then me. For those who can actually see the stream, those of you on radio don't know this, but those who can see the stream, I'm wearing a White Sox hat, which I know won't go over very well in the Twin Cities, but after the couple of years that the White Sox have had, I'm proud that we're in first place. Also, the first baseball game that I ever went to go see was in Minneapolis. I went to go see the Twins when we lived in South Dakota. I am the CEO of RJS and Associates out of Rocky Boy, Montana. We're a small team. We're small but mighty. We're 6 strong. Plus, I've had an intern for the last week and a half, and he's catching on very quickly. And hopefully, at some point in the future, he can come work for the business. We do resource development, mainly grant writing, and at this time of year, it's normally our slow season, but due to certain things this fiscal year, it's our heaviest grant season and that we've had in over a year and a half in the middle of summer. And I keep myself pretty busy. And I'll just add that with our connections, it just so happened I met Dr. Gaughan 30 plus years ago, long before I met his sister, who is my wife. So Dr. Gone is my brother-in-law. So we have these connections that come full circle, and that's what happens in Indian country. So I'm known to ramble, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, well, they say, 2 degrees of separation maybe in Indian country, and you guys have just knocked it down to 1. There is no separation.
Exactly.
And I'm curious, what we'll get to later, Jim, why you're so busy with grant writing this summer. I suspect it's because of all the changes in Washington, but we'll get to that in a second. Michelle's had a long career in the nonprofit sector. Joe has had to, we know that money makes the world go round often. And so there's the grant writer that you all want to know, RJS and Associates, look him up. And Dr. Gone has done a lot of research over the years, including on my res, where he actually has, he's done very intensive testing regarding the mental health of my own family. And so there's lots of secrets he's learned that he hasn't even been able to tell me. But anyhow, so in 1994, the 4 of us all applied to this leadership program called the Ambassadors. And we thought it was cool, but it was only the second class. So there wasn't a lot of reputation or brand name around this thing. So I'm curious, and whoever wants to start first, jump in. What did you bring to that program, right? Because when you recruit to these things, we learn a lot of leadership from our families and our parents and people around us, even in the workplace and on sports teams, right? Maybe a coach or somebody taught us a lot about what it takes to be our best and to help others be their best. But we applied to this formal program, and actually, why don't we go to a break and then we'll come back, and whoever's going to go first. We applied to this program. It was a formal program, and we came together, 20 some of us, and we had 4 meetings over the course of a year. And one of those gatherings took us to Washington, D.C., where we could learn about what's going on in the nation's capital, which is so important to Indian country. And one took us to a reservation. One was to their home base in New Mexico, where the sponsoring organization, Americans for Indian Opportunity, was based. And then we had an international trip to Bolivia, of all places. So that group experience was very formative for us. And then we, as individuals, had our own journeys. And so when I come back, I want to know what you brought to that experience. And we'll see you right after these messages. Thank you for
maintaining our health, particularly our heart health, is very important to us as a family.
Your heart gives you time with family, time with community, time to pass down what matters. Protecting your heart helps keep those moments alive. A visit with a healthcare provider can be one step toward a healthier future. Learn more at hennepincounty.gov/hearts-beats. Your heart health is essential because your heart beats for generations. Hey, it's Robert Pilot from Native Roots Radio. For a meal that feeds your soul and health, check out Gatherings Cafe. Located in the renovated Minneapolis American Indian Center, Executive Chef Vernon Defoe and team serve up incredible indigenous flavors. Gatherings Cafe has amazing bison tacos featuring lean protein from native wise, corn tortillas, and homemade sides. It's fresh, local food rooted in ancestral knowledge. Stop by for breakfast or lunch. That's Gatherings Cafe, where tradition meets innovation. I heard sex trafficking happens a lot in Indian country. What is that?
Here are some of the real reasons why sex trafficking happens in Indian country. Unequal gender roles that were forced on us by colonization. Communities don't have enough resources. Silence around domestic and sexual violence. Lack of attention and justice for missing and murdered Indigenous people. There's a lot of behavior that keeps our communities out of balance. These are just a few true reasons why Native communities are targeted by traffickers. When these acts of violence happen in our communities, it opens us all up for exploitation.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
The city of Minneapolis is now on Native Roots Radio with Minneapolis AIR. AIR stands for American Indian Relations. Guest host Christine McDonald talks to people about important things affecting the city's Native communities. Minneapolis AIR dives into topics like public safety, public health, elections, and so much more. Tune in to Minneapolis AIR on Native Roots Radio from 5 to 6 p.m. on the second Wednesday of every month, right here on AM 950.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda. and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
Well, Robert is away from the mic tonight. David Cournoyer filling in for him. I kind of look like Robert, so that's why I wear his shirt. And I don't know if there's any benefits to that, but I'll take them. So we're going to talk leadership tonight. Thanks for joining us on Native Roots Radio on AM 950 and on live stream Facebook. We all went through this program as 20-somethings. Some of us in college, some of us in our first jobs. I was actually a TV reporter at the time for the NBC station in Minneapolis, and we all came and showed up at this first meeting. And Joe Gaughan, you were a PhD student at the time. What was it about the ambassadors that attracted you, and what did you bring to that experience?
Yeah, I vividly remember seeing the call for applications for the ambassadors program and how it was described and getting really excited. I was getting my doctorate at that time in clinical community psychology at the University of Illinois. I had lived and worked on my reservation in summertime and during college leading up to that period of time. And I had done a stint in the Army. I had enlisted for a couple of years prior to then. So I had these different kinds of templates or maps for how to engage in leadership. And an ambassadors program promised to really help me think through, along with a cohort of folks and some great leaders like LaDonna Harris and folks, all the folks, that talented, amazing people she gathered together as mentors for us, to think through different leadership patterns, styles, and ways of conducting yourself in positions like that. And to me, it was so important because not that long after we exited that program, I was tapped by my tribal counselor to be our tribal administrator for a time. And so I was kind of away from my doctoral studies a little bit to take that on. And believe me, nothing can prepare you for the politics on the Northern Plains and trying to be in that kind of a position, but it was so illuminating, and it led to a lot of insights and takeaways that I thought were really great. And there's more than I can say in a few minutes, but let me just say that one thing that really stood out to me is, of course, military leadership is very hierarchical. You wear your rank on your sleeve, literally, and you follow orders, and maybe you give orders if you're in that kind of role. Obviously, that's not tribal leadership at all. Tribal leadership is much more, it's sort of grafted onto traditional approaches to leadership that harken back on the Northern Plains to how we lived prior to the reservation era. And those practices still persist in ways that sometimes end up juxtaposing with formal tribal leadership, and sometimes don't really so well. So navigating that in a couple of years later as that tribal administrator was a challenge. And then academic leadership was another thing altogether. So having a chance to experience these different sorts of approaches was very helpful relative to the lessons I took away from the AIO ambassadors program.
I like that juxtaposition of hierarchy versus where you could walk into a room and you might not know who the tribal chair is, right? Because they're sweeping the floors, or they're they're doing their thing, right? Michelle, you had your dad was a big shot, so to speak. He was the #1 Indian in Washington D.C. at one time. So I don't mean to embarrass anybody, but that's what he did. And he's an attorney. And then you fell in love with buffalo in multiple ways. And so in 1994, you were working with buffalo. And what attracted you to the program? What did you bring?
It's crazy because, unlike Joe, I don't even remember what I was doing in 94 and how I heard about AIO. I'm sure I showed it to my dad or my aunties, and somebody was like, "Oh, LaDonna Harris, yes, you should do that." And "Oh, Louis LaRose is on the board," because they all know each other. And I think that's what really attracted me is back in the day, like, they all knew each other. Everybody working to advance Indian country it was a small crew that was doing a lot of the work. So they really knew each other. And I thought this was an opportunity to meet other young folks doing the work throughout the country, Indian country. And so that's why I wanted to do it. And I think back then I was all buffalo all the time. I had been working at Native American Fish and Wildlife Society, and they were helping gather the tribes to start the intertribal bison. They had already been going kind of ad hoc for a year or so, but they got their A&A grant, and they hired my coworker to be the director, and he turned around and hired me to be the administrative director. So there I was, like 26, and all of a sudden I'm doing drawdowns to the federal government. And, I think of it now and I'm like, I didn't know squat. Like, I can't believe we were just in the Little Rapid City bus station doing work for this incredible organization that was beginning. But I thought it sounded great. So I put off law school. I was going to go back to law school and I put it off to go ITBC, and it's been all Buffalo all the time. But that's one of the biggest things I got was all these connections with you guys. David and I have stayed very close, and Brenda, Juanita, but I've gotten to see Joe in Rapid City once, and I'm always on an email string cracking up at Joe and David, and Jim is always with the one-liners. But anyway, it was like gaining all the friendships and connections has been, you can't duplicate that unless you have an organization or something that brings you together.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder. And I think, right, the network and the connections and the people and the relationships, right, almost are universally top three of any program experience, whether it's leadership or grant writing or probably med school, right? It's those people that you went to battle with and you learn from, and maybe you had a couple drinks with. But thanks for the reminder about Louis LaRose and those folks. LaDonna Harris, who the founder of AIO, was one of the most influential Native American people in Washington, D.C., probably for a good 10 or more years, when all of that stuff was going down, right? In the 70s, President Nixon signed the Indian Self-Determination Act, right, which really started opened the door for tribes to actually not be told all the time what to do from different government agencies. And so she was married to a senator from Oklahoma, and by that relationship was in the room when a lot of this stuff was going down, and was quite influential. And then she wanted to start a leadership program, I think, right, as you mentioned, Michelle, to continue those relationships with the Louis LaRoses of the world, with her ex-husband, Fred Harris, the senator, with tribal leaders from, I'm trying to think, Porch Creek Band of Creek, Eddie Tullis, Eddie Tullis and folks. So being introduced to those types of leaders was, I think, a big draw to the program too. Jim Swan, how about you? You were still a White Sox fan then, or were you in Chicago then?
I was in Chicago. And another reason why I'm wearing the White Sox hat is in commemoration of the fact that I was living in Chicago when we met. I actually, my story is a little bit different because I was working at Mace College, which Dr. Beck and Rosalind were there, and that's how I got recruited, and that's how I think I had the inside track on being accepted. Had I applied on my own merits, I probably never would have been accepted. But because that's something in Indian country, it's sometimes who you know, right? And I knew people who helped me get selected. I came with almost really no knowledge. I was just getting started in what's become a long career in Indian country. It might be surprising to people that I was a total introvert. I still am. And I'm just a long-winded introvert now. So I can pass as an extrovert, but I'm not. And so it was about opening horizons for me, about meeting new people, going to interesting places. I come back with stories from all 4 trips, but there's a couple stories that really resonate that I repeat 30 years later about our trip to Bolivia, especially the trip to the rainforest, to the small village in the rainforest, and basically the takeaways from that were we had this discussion with folks in this village, and they told us about about U.S. aid coming in and bringing them sewing machines because they thought that would be a good way for them to do economic development. And those sewing machines sat in a storeroom because that's not what they wanted to do. There was no self-determination for these people within the natives within the rainforest, and it really struck me at the time and strikes me 30 plus years later. And then I also remember the trip back from the rainforest where shockingly it rained, and we were sitting on the back of these pickup trucks on these boards with tarp over us, and I was in the back, and despite the tarp, I got completely soaked. And those are a couple of things that I take away is memories of meeting you folks and all the other classmates that we had along the way, plus our trip, especially Bolivia. And I see that we're running out of time on this segment, so I'll send it back to you, David.
I like that long-winded introvert. Little did we know. So when we come back, we'll shift to maybe some more advice that we would all have. What we wish we'd known 30 years ago that might have propelled us faster on our journeys. And I do really like the reminiscing. So thanks, Jim, for mentioning that. But we're talking about leadership on Native Roots Radio. Robert Pilot's away for the evening. A different kind of leadership, participatory, servant leadership. And not just about making another, more money or getting another degree, but what do you use with that knowledge and skills? What are your gifts to allow you to give back? So thank you for joining us on Native Roots Radio on AM 950 in the Twin Cities and streaming live across the interwebs. We'll be right back.
Heart health is more than just the physical well-being. It represents like a foundation of vitality, resilience, and the ability to live fully.
Your heart carries stories of resilience, love, and survival. Caring for your heart means honoring yourself and the generations before and after you. It means protecting your ability to gather, laugh, and be present. Learn more about your heart health at hennepincounty.gov/heart-beats, because your story matters and your heart beats for generations.
When we heal from our traumas,
when we face our fears,
let go of our addictions,
when we relearn our values,
when we live our teachings,
respecting our elders,
cherishing and honoring our children,
when we honor and take care of our spirit,
there will be no room left for sexual violence.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, it's Robert Pilot from Native Roots Radio. For a meal that feeds your soul and health, check out Gatherings Cafe. Located in the renovative Minneapolis American Indian Center, Executive Chef Vernon Defoe and team serve up incredible indigenous flavors. Gatherings Cafe has amazing bison tacos featuring lean protein from native wise, corn tortillas, and homemade sides. It's fresh, local food rooted in ancestral knowledge. Stop by for breakfast or lunch. That's Gatherings Cafe, where tradition meets innovation.
This is Chase Iron Eyes, announcing a new show on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. The show is called Native American Patriot Talk Radio. What will we do on the show? We are going to explore and dive into the source of American constitutional sovereignty, the intersection of Native American and legal issues. Find us the first and third Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. on AM 950.
The city of Minneapolis is now on Native Roots Radio with Minneapolis AIR. AIR stands for American Indian Relations. Guest host Christine McDonald talks to people about important things affecting the city's Native communities. Minneapolis AIR dives into topics like public safety, public health, elections, and so much more. Tune in to Minneapolis AIR on Native Roots Radio from 5 to 6 p.m. on the second Wednesday of every month, right here on AM 950.
Hey, it's Patrick for Zero Res. There's a lot happening in July. It's America's 250th birthday. Aquatennial is also coming to Minneapolis later this month. You've also got beach days, fishing days, time spent on the playground with the kids. So what are you coming home to at night in terms of your carpet cleanliness? If the answer to that is questionable or worse, then you need my cleaning heroes at Zero Res to come help get things in order this summer. If your carpet's looking more like a snowbank in late March, muddy, crunchy, and kind of mysterious, it's time to call Zero Res. This month, get 3 rooms of carpet cleaned starting at just $139 and get your air duct cleaned starting at $599 per unit. Schedule your appointment at ZeroResMinnesota.com or call 9520-RES and say you want the AM 950 special. Back order forward spells the same. Zero Res. With your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Tonight, clear with a low of 58, then Thursday, sunshine with a high of 82. The Great Wall has been your home for Chinese favorites since 1981. Don't miss the sesame chicken, mushu pork with Chinese pancakes, or Peking duck. Stop in at the restaurant on France Avenue and 45th Street along the Minneapolis-Edina City line, or check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us.
AM 950 KTNF, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Hi, this is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. I'm Ho Chunk, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
Congresswoman Davids is a great example, right, of the kind of leader we're talking about who's going to wear multiple hats. I remember meeting her when she was working at Indian Collective, a nonprofit that President Obama used to talk about on the Pine Ridge Reservation. She was there. I think she's a lawyer, isn't she, Michelle? Maybe. I thought she had a JD degree, and I know she's a mixed martial artist too, right? So, you know, hey, we're talking about Native American leadership with 3 fun and successful leaders who've had a long journey. We're the OGs. I don't know who's the oldest here. I think I am by maybe a couple months. But in 1994, the 4 of us came together for a leadership program, and we've talked about some of the things that were part of that program. We took physical journeys together, which I think always helps, right? Get us out of our patterns and go to Bolivia, as Jim mentioned, and see the great. You think we got problems, right? I think that was very, very humbling for us to say, what are we complaining about, right? Just what the folks in Bolivia have to the indigenous people. And then the networks, the Louis LaRose was talk about Ho Chunk and Congresswoman Davids. Louis was just a great man of the people and humble Buffalo advocate and all kinds, and funny, right? The sense of humor to get through some of the stuff that indigenous communities and any kind of marginalized community has to do. And just the gift, right, of sitting around a circle with these folks, Joe working on a psychology degree, Jim trying to figure out if he's really a White Sox fan or not, Michelle working on bison. But you sit around a circle with these people and you're like, what am I doing with my life, right? What am I doing? And it's really motivating, right? It's really motivating. We had tribal leaders, we had teachers, we had artists, we had museum directors, cultural center directors, MDs, and lots of people that knew their language, people that weren't afraid to scold us. Remember our friend Madonna? She was not afraid to scold us. And, you know, it takes a village, right? But what do you wish you'd known 30 years ago that you know now? Michelle, let's start with you.
Well, I think one of the things when I was thinking about it was like I understood that I didn't know anything yet. And I think that's important that you need to realize, like, not like know your place, but, you know, you understand and you lean on other people and people who know better teach you. And that happened through AIO, but also, you know, I had a real mentor in Rebecca Adamson, and she's like, oh, you're at a nonprofit, let me teach you how to fundraise. So I was very lucky that, you know, parent connections, or your auntie knows somebody, or these things start to help you in your chosen career. And I remember once visiting with you, David. I think we were probably at a conference, but it was funny how eventually you get a little more comfortable, you understand more, and you're able to speak up and give your opinions and your and share your expertise once you start having some. And I think that eventually you realize that you're one of the people that now needs to be going to the front of the room and starting to present. Like, you can't look around for other people. Like, now it's you. Now you need to start serving on boards and contributing. And, that's just how it works. And I remember thinking that for a while, like, oh, I can't wait to get on boards. And now I've served on many boards, and they've all been really great experiences. You learn so much from other people on boards. It's sort of like a continuing leadership program in a way, being on different boards. And so I just think that's one of the things that, and you need to be smart about that too. Like, term limits are a real thing and should be a real thing in every single leadership role in the world, because you always need to move on and make space for others. And also we need new ideas. And so just learning that, like learning also to move on from when you're not at a certain place anymore, or whatever, that's okay. And you can pick up and keep working. And so I guess that's some of my learning.
Yeah, wow, term limits. I don't think, as an Indian man, I can't, the words don't come out of my mouth. Come on, you want me to give up? Jim, you were in Chicago working at NACE College, Native American Educational Services College, and it was Native run, right? But it wasn't a classic tribal college in the fact that it was tribally chartered, but doing much the same work. What did you bring to the Leadership Ambassadors Program in 1994?
Well, I didn't bring a whole heck of a lot. I mean, I was sort of naive. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. I'm not sure what I want to do when I actually grow up. So I was kind of clueless. And fortunately, I had smarter people than me in the room to help guide me along. But I think with what Michelle said, at a certain point, I was early on in my career because I'd been in graduate school, and then I took this summer job that turned into a gig for a few years that led me to Alaska, that led me back to Rocky Boy 28 years ago, and my dad brought me back to work at the business, and little did I know that he was eventually going to have me take over. And he handed the reins to me, I don't even remember how many years ago, but when he passed away 13 and a half years ago, I had to step up because people thought that, oh, this business that he's built, it's not going to last 6 months. And 13 and a half years later, we're not only surviving but thriving. So I've learned resilience. One of the things that Michelle also mentioned was on term limits, and kind of interesting. I do sit on a few boards right now, and one of them does have term limits of 2 terms of 3 years. I'm just entering my second term, but they've made exceptions over the years to add an extra year for extraordinary circumstances, like if you're a past president, because I'm intending next year to be the vice chair and the chair the year after, and then I'll have an extra year as the past chair. So I'll end up with 7 years on this board when all is said and done. But I do agree that at some point you do have to pass the mantle to others. And, I'm planning on 12 years from now retiring, when I'll have put in 40 years at RJS, and I'm looking for my next gig 12 years from now. And that's I'm auditioning for radio shows. I think that I'll be good in radio in 2038.
I like it. I like it. I like it. You and AI and Claude and whatever they're called, right? Co-pilot and Swan. Joe, how about you? Joe is one of those really brilliant thinkers, and I've seen him speak to other academics, and he kind of enjoys challenging and not just assuming that some of these right almost platitudes that we kind of just say are true. And Joe just kind of loves to tweak everybody and really question them in a very smart way. It's so smart that you don't even know you've been tweaked half the time. Joe, what did you take part in this program to learn how to deal with some of the more common men like me?
I think what does stand out to me in life and in the world in general are paradoxes and contradictions, and those are of interest to me. We in AIO, we were so privileged to be mentored and guided by a whole board. LaDonna leading this amazing board, but I remember that's where I first met Henrietta Mann, who's like a hero. She's this amazing professor and scholar, and Ada Deer, and she had this amazing network of folks who could inspire us as well as guide us. And I left there, with the idea that we all have a personal medicine journey. That was a really important part of the Ambassadors program, that we figure out where we're gotten our medicine from, where we'll continue to kind of collect power for, a living and for contributing in important ways. And, the 4 R's is what the program is built on: relationship, responsibility, reciprocity, redistribution, these traditional cultural values that have to persist in leadership. Well, when I arrived at Fort Belknap and was tapped to be the tribal administrator, I thought, okay, well, I've had some background in this, and it's not the Army, so there are ways to think about how to go forward with this. But, the contradiction and paradoxes were really evident. And I remember one day, this guy came in to see me, and he was a tribal member, of course, and he needed, money for something was going on. I think he needed to travel for a funeral somewhere. And we didn't have a pot of money set aside at that time. Our, tribe isn't especially rich or anything. And I had to, apologize, sort of say, we don't have a fund that we really can allocate that to. And so he said, okay. And he walked out of the office, and I saw him head down the hall to some other office. And, I saw him later in the day here and there, and I maybe took him 3 or 4 hours, but he walked out of there with a check to go to this event. And it reminded me, okay, so there's actually traditional precedents for what we think of as leadership and of, running, supporting tribal members. And in my world, the Aani world at that time, the traditional is that, chiefs are people who have resources to help followers. And it's very, very important to be generous with your resources. In fact, you can't be a leader without being generous with your resources. And yet, as a tribal administrator trying to run a tribe, I was brought in, and no one person could tell me, how many programs do we have? How many staff do we have? No one person could tell me that. I had to create this. So here I am trying to manage a bureaucracy for modern life and the modern world with these traditional precedents behind, and they just don't make sense sometimes when they come together. And so, as much as we were cultivated to appreciate the 4 core cultural values with traditional precedent in our communities, those things do carry forward in really important ways. But it's not always obvious how you apply them in the context of making a bureaucracy work. And that's an example of the kind of paradox and contradiction that really catches my attention and really whets my appetite for thinking through these issues.
Thank you, Joe. And I'm sure there's no tribal government now that would do such a thing. But I would have loved to have seen you in that role, Joe. With two tribes that were married together, right? The Nakota and the White Clay, and now you were supposed to make sense of it, and you've got competing families, and it can feel like really cutthroat politics. But as you once said to me, Joe, it's just about leaders trying to take care of their own, And I think sometimes the corruption or whatever some of these terms are thrown at people could be that simple, and it may not look above board, but it might just be people, right, living their values and living what they, as leaders, right? So when we come back to Native Roots Radio talking about Indigenous leadership, let's give some advice to the next generation and be the OGs.
The city of Minneapolis is now on Native Roots Radio with Minneapolis Air. AIR stands for American Indian Relations. Guest host Christine McDonald talks to people about important things affecting the city's Native communities. Minneapolis AIR dives into topics like public safety, public health, elections, and so much more. Tune in to Minneapolis AIR on Native Roots Radio from 5 to 6 p.m. on the second Wednesday of every month, right here on AM 950.
This is Chase Iron Eyes announcing a new show on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. The show is called Native American Patriot Talk Radio. What will we do on the show? We are going to explore and dive into the source of American constitutional sovereignty, the intersection of Native American and legal issues. Find us the first and third Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. on AM 950.
Culture prevents so many negative things from happening to us as individuals and as communities.
Strong roots begin with a healthy heart. For Indigenous women, heart health is part of caring for community, culture, and future generations. Even small steps can help protect what matters most. Discover ways to support your heart at hennepincounty.gov/hearts-beats, because your heart beats for generations.
Unwanted sexting or photos, inappropriate jokes, even tickling or wrestling can feel like a violation. Catcalling, cornering, or groping, getting them drunk or high for sex, recording sexual acts without permission, hurting someone because of their sexual orientation, raping a family member, a child, a date, a friend, a stranger, purchasing a human being for sex. You make the choice every single time. Sexual violence is many things. Make a choice. Do not do it.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hi, it's Dr. Evan Adams, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio. Hey, Victor, you better be listening.
In this portion of the show, we'd like to bring awareness to our wolf and bear populations throughout Turtle Island. Say no to the hunts.
I think that's your cue, Jim, to howl for us. Oh no, you're a Grizz, right? Are you a
Grizz?
Okay, University.
I got to roar like the bear.
And what's Montana State?
The kittens, Bob Kittens,
Bobcats, and the Grizz. Yeah, I see that every year. Well, welcome back, Native Roots Radio, talking about leadership. And okay, we know it all. We went through this program, and did we even get a certificate? I don't know that we did.
We did.
Yes, we did. We were Kellogg Fellows.
I better find my
Kellogg Fellow. Oh, I forgot about that, Michelle.
Yeah, the Kellogg Foundation was funding this, so that is a little nice touch. What advice do you have? Like, we've talked about humility, we've talked about networking, we've talked about fake it till you make it, staying connected, right? What advice do you have to folks that really want to make a difference in their communities? And Dr. Gaughan, let's start with you.
I think it's sort of embarrassing to be put into a leadership position in many instances where you're responsible for getting things done and where you're in control of resources, especially when those resources are scarce in some way, and you're working with other Native people, where I think it might be a cultural universal among us to really respect individual autonomy and people's space and who they are as people. And we don't boss people around. We don't interfere where we're not invited. And you have to be careful. You can offend people pretty easily. And so I think that means is that leadership takes on the character of really making opportunities available for people to decide to take advantage of, and really importantly, resourcing those opportunities when you can so that they're able to take advantage of them. So it's not, what the worst situation we get in is when we have to make hard decisions where some people will win and some people will lose, and the resources are too scarce. No one wants to do that. So the first thing you do is you form a committee so that you're not responsible alone for whatever the judgments are.
Good answer.
So, yeah, I think making opportunities available for people and resourcing them well and letting people decide and choose what they want out of it and trying to have a variety of those available is a great accomplishment when we can do that in Indian country.
How about you, Jim Swan in Billings, Montana tonight? What advice do you have for young emerging leaders or people trying to encourage, right, people to take take that risk, take that step.
Let's say ditto. Joe already said it, so I don't need to say anything. But I'm kidding. But humor, you have to. Indian country operates on humor. Sometimes gallows humor, and if we didn't laugh in my job, in my position, we would we would go crazy if we didn't laugh, and we're making jokes all the time. We're doing very serious work, but we're making jokes. Resilience, we're around still for a reason, because we're resilient. My staff is resilient. My company almost went under a couple of times, but we battled back. And something that Joe said about individual autonomy, in my particular position, I've got staff that I tell, okay, do this, and then I let them go, and they go very well on their own, and with very little direction. I'm glad when they call me. Today I was Mr. Popular. I received all kinds of calls back to back to back to back to back. And it makes me feel like I'm still useful, not quite ready to be put out to pasture. And so, yeah, resilience, humor, autonomy are things to and respect. Be respectful of the people with whom you work, and that's about my advice. And I want to leave Michelle some time, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, Michelle, how do you tell people no? How do you, given scarce resources, right? It's sometimes hard to pick priorities.
Yeah, I think with leadership, there's more than one way to be a leader in your community. It doesn't have to be on council. And I think that everybody sometimes gets zeroed in on that's what I have to do and I strongly believe in the nonprofit world, of course, but especially because that helps with the gaps. Like our governments can't function with the minimal funding they have. So there needs to be a strong nonprofit sector on the reservation. And that's a lot of places for leaders, is to work at the nonprofits or any of the support agencies like that. So I think that's one thing, is don't only think of leadership as the roles that are out there. And then really finding something that you think is important. I mean, that naturally you're going to do better. You're going to be more compassionate, more passionate for that. Like I said, I mean, I got so excited about this whole buffalo idea way back when, and we're kind of seeing a resurgence now. And, I'm about to be 60 and we're starting a nonprofit. What am I doing? Like everybody else is starting to talk retirement and we're starting over. But, part of that is with just the renewed energy with our daughter being so interested in what's going on with buffalo. And we've really seen some commercialization of the animal, and as they are sacred to our people here, especially in the Plains tribes, we just felt called to get back involved and try to, support the cultural relationship above any kind of commercialization, so that we help buffalo be allowed to be buffalo and not start being some kind of cattle.
Well, and it's interesting what you and Fred DuBray have lived through. I mean, you've seen cycles, right? Remember, once upon a time, these mobile slaughter units were a bad thing, and now everybody wants one, and Obama and the Biden administration's jumped on, and that's one thing about getting old, right? You all do see these cycles. It'll come back, it'll come back, it'll come back. But Jim, I love your sense of humor, and it's always been fun tweaking you on Facebook. I want to give Jim credit though. Your dad passed, what'd you say, 13 years?
13 and a half, yeah.
Look at Jim Swan on Facebook. This is all going to make you tear up, Jim. Every single day he acknowledges his dad on Facebook. Yeah. It's really cool. It's really cool, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Michelle, same with Michelle. Great mom, great nonprofit leader. Moved from Boulder, Colorado to what I would call the middle of nowhere, but right, it's God's country there in Cheyenne River.
Fred says it's not the middle of nowhere, but we can see it from here.
And just for the record, Montana's God's country.
Okay.
Indeed.
And Dr. Joe Gahn, super, look for him at the Harvard University Native American program. And if you want to be challenged and you're thinking about historical trauma or behavioral health, one of his contemporaries, who's also a well-known researcher, calls Joe the loyal opposition. But thank you all for joining me. This has been fun to reconnect. I think we've given some advice that wasn't just about, what did these 4 people do 30 years ago? Oh my gosh. But we'll stay in touch. And this has been a great conversation on leadership and collective moving people forward, right? We need more consensus. We need more elders to help us make these decisions. The vote can't be 51-49. It just isn't going to be sustainable, right? And I think there's a lot of wisdom in Indian country to know that. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about Indigenous innovation. So please tune in, same time, same channel. We're going to be joined by Lee Francis, who's known as Dr. Indigenerd, and Brett Ramey, who does a lot of traditional plants and land-based education in Iowa and Nebraska, and Kansas. Thanks again, Jim, Michelle, Joe. Appreciate it. Take care. Say hi to your families, and we'll see you next time, everybody.
Thank you.
Maintaining our health, particularly our heart health, is very important to us as a family.
Your heart gives you